Hello! Welcome to an adventure! I knew there was something I missed, and it was unmuting the microphone. So, hi everybody. Welcome back. I know it has been a little bit, it feels like it's been forever. It's only been 2 weeks. But last week the library was closed during the showtime, so there was no show. Also, yeah, unmute and turn on the captions. That's the other thing that I have missed doing. So let me do that. Okay, I think captions are functioning. Yes. Okay, good. So yeah, hello and welcome to Adventure Time? No. Yes? I don't know. I want to see. Haha! I have succeeded in getting that emote storm added. Emotes will bounce across the screen when used, probably though only in the Rogan 27 chat. It's really complicated to try and do two together. It doesn't work on the other chat, so sorry. Anyway, I can figure it out, but not today. No. I'm glad that you did try. I haven't gotten there yet. That was like a thing that I was like, you know, I can do this, so I'm gonna. Anyway, welcome to Archival Adventures. If you are new here, I am Anthony Wright Day Hernandez, Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech, and also known on the internet as Rogan 27. So this show is a weekly show that I do on Wednesdays, where we basically do an unboxing of archival materials from our collections. And it goes out to both the twitch.tv/VTUL Studios channel, which is the library's channel, as well as my own channel, which is twitch.tv/Rogan27. So welcome in, everybody. I have seen some of you in the chat room, and that is appreciated. Hi, Puddle Glum. Hi, Key Squared. Hi, Detective Zen. Hi, Hannah. It is great to have you here. So thanks for shouting out the library's channel. We will be looking at some archival materials here shortly. I actually know less about what we're looking at today than I normally do. I really have no idea what's in here. So we're gonna find out together. I do have, I forgot to bring up one of my touchpads, and I have to use the built-in one in the laptop to control one of the computers, but I keep forgetting that. And I keep trying to control this computer to my right with the touchpad that controls the computer in front of me. It's silly. But before we dive into looking at some historical documents, we like to take a moment and just look at the history of the institution and acknowledge that it's not great. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands in Western territories. We understand that honoring Native peoples without explicit material commitments falls short of our institutional responsibilities. Through sustained, transparent, and meaningful engagement with the Tutelo and Monacan peoples and other Native nations, we commit to changing the trajectory of Virginia Tech's history by increasing Indigenous student, staff, and faculty recruitment and retention, diversifying course offerings, and meeting the growing needs of all Virginia tribes and supporting their sovereignty. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations, owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. We acknowledge that enslaved Black people generated wealth that financed the predecessor institution to Virginia Tech, the Preston and Olin Institute, and that they worked on construction of its building. Not until 1953, however, was the first Black student permitted to enroll. Through inclusive VT, the institutional and individual commitment to prosim, that I may serve. In the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence, we commit to advancing a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. So, today, we'll be looking at the Blake W. Corson Jr. papers. It is the final stream of November, so that means it's high energy physics. I don't immediately know how Corson is connected to high energy physics. It's not a name that I really know. But let's take a look at biographical note. Family history. Blake Wilson Corson was born in Cumberland, Virginia in 1874. Wilson Corson had 5 sisters. Corson attended Virginia Tech in 1895 and married Anne Mason White, who apparently went by Annie, on April 23rd, 1907. Born to Blake Wilson Corson and Anne Mason Corson, wow. Okay, that's unusual. And I look at finding aids all the time, and I got confused by this one. Because that entire first paragraph is about the guy's father. But it's written, like it shows up first, and it's written in the way that we would write about the person who we're trying to give the history on, which threw me off. The person whose papers these are is Blake Wilson Corson Jr., who was born in 1908 in Henrico, Virginia. He had 2 younger sisters, Judith Parker and Georgina White, and he married Shirley Huckster on December 4th, 1947, and they had 1 daughter. Okay. So, graduated from the John Marshall High School, attended the University of Richmond, and earned a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Physics in 1932. And then he went to work for NACA, which later became NASA. Yes, I see the typo in the spelling of NASA's name. It's interesting here, the connection to Virginia Tech is his father. There's no indication in this history that he attended Tech, which is fine. It was just, I thought he was directly connected when I was reading the first paragraph. And then after I realized that the first paragraph was about his father and not him, I had to make adjustments. It's fine. The papers are comprised of professional and personal files, correspondence, and published materials from 1861 to 1984, with the most of them being from 1934 to 1979, related to his career as an engineer at NASA, Langley. We've looked at other things from people who worked at NASA Langley in the past. NASA Langley is located in Langley, Virginia. They did a lot of engineering for NASA, as well as they did a lot of development work and calculating of spatial trajectories and things like that. The Langley facility was a really prominent one. I think it's less so today. People don't know as much about it today, but topics include aerodynamic performance of aircraft propellers and manned aircraft. That's not high energy physics. Wind tunnel fans, that's not high energy physics either. Jet noise suppression, again, and tunnel calibration, again. So we will probably need to come back to this collection in future to look at wind tunnel stuff, because Corson designed wind tunnels for testing at NASA. But that's not the topic today. We have various series here, arranged by type, it says. So we got personal papers, personal projects, and correspondence and memoranda, and then professional projects and publications, journals, and reports. I only have 2 boxes with me today, box 1 and box 5, and I don't know exactly where it says in all of this description. The reason I have those is because of his work on this topic, towards energy independence. So we're going to be looking at energy production and, in part, alternate sources of energy other than fossil fuels, because he was interested in and researched that topic, partly on behalf of NASA and partly, I think, it seems just from personal interest and his background in physics. But I don't know what most of the materials are. I glanced at it enough to just be able to figure out that the main topic is energy production. That's all I know. So we're going to explore together and see how it is, but I don't know exactly how much of it is directly tied into high energy physics, which is the ostensible series, but we'll see. And I don't know if there will be a high energy physics episode in December, because the final episode in December will feature archivist Kira, and we're going to talk about some food. So yeah, there's not going to be a high energy physics in December, and we're kind of like, I can go back and revisit, I'm digressing here, but I can go back and revisit some of the things, the collections that we looked at related to high energy physics. There are a couple of things like Virginia Tech's nuclear power plant and stuff like that that I haven't done streams on yet that sort of fit within the topic. So there's more I could do, but I think the sub-series, the official like once a month high energy physics, is probably going to become less regular. I will still note them as part of the high energy physics series when I do something that fits that topic. But we've gone through most of the major collections at least once. So rather than trying to find something new on high energy physics every month, I'll just note it as part of the sub-series whenever it comes up. And I'm thinking that for 2024, my last Wednesday of the month sub-series might just be pulp speculative fiction. And I might just pull some of those old pulp comic books and pulp speculative fiction magazines and just read stories from them once a month. They're going to be mid-energy physics for a while. I don't know. Maybe they'll be low-energy physics. Ooh, what would low-energy physics be like? Maybe that's what dark matter is. Anyway, and I will note, I'll mention it again at the end. Next week, we're finally going to return to the guy who was designing space stations, who also was working on interstellar flight for NASA, but we didn't manage to get to the interstellar flight stuff. We're looking at that next Wednesday. So I'm going to actually start showing off some documents, though. How about that? Okay, this is the episode highlights as prepared by my student assistant, with one additional notation from me that you can see in blue colored pencil. So these are the things I was pointed to as interesting things to look at. Of course, if you see anything listed on the finding aid in box 1 or box 5 that you want to see, let me know. Because even if it isn't directly related to high energy physics, I've got the boxes here, and there's no reason I can't show it to you. So yeah. But to start, box 1. Research notes on toward energy independence. I mean, research notes, we'll see. They could be really interesting. They could be really boring. Who knows? But they were pointed to as a highlight, but also as something that fit the topic. So I bumped. Wow. I bumped one light and it made the whole thing shake. Oopsie. Does anybody know anything about the history of energy independence research in the United States? And even like what that means. Because this is specifically regarding that topic. The folder is towards energy independence research. And that towards energy independence is in quotation marks because it is a title. I believe it is a paper that he published. I don't know though, but I think it's a paper he published. We'll find out together. AIAA, 11th Annual Meeting and Technical Display, February 24th to 26th, 1974, at the Sheraton Park Hotel in Washington, D.C. This is apparently on the topic of combustion. A sneak preview of the AIAA 11th Annual Meeting. AIAA. First, before I dive in, I want to know what the abbreviation is. I might be able to figure it out, but I would appreciate confirmation. The problem is that this is a publication written for people who are members, so they don't need to have it spelled out. All right, I go and look. AIAA. Ah, there it is. American Institute of I can speak. American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Okay, so let's see. Several people have asked me what will be the theme of the next AIAA annual meeting. The AIAA gets it all together, or more formally, annual overview. In advanced technologies, only the annual meeting spans full spectrum. Displays. Blurg. I don't know. So far, uncertain. Ooh, combustion, research and development. By Anthony K. Oppenheim at UC Berkeley and Felix J. Weinberg, Imperial College London. The central problem that energy technology faces today can be put this way. How can we reconcile affluence with effluence? As has been well established, per capita gross national product is tied closely to the rate of energy consumption. It seems clear, therefore, that in spite of all conservation efforts, the demand for energy will continue to increase while, at least for the next decade or two, hydrocarbons, particularly petroleum, will constitute a major part of the energy sector. Again, this is 1974, so the next decade or two would have put them into the 1990s, which was, it's like 25 years ago. As demonstrated by the next graph, showing the primary energy source mix in 1971, hydrocarbon combustion comprised about 95% of the entire energy production. Even in 1985, when nuclear power, I was like, wait a minute. Because it's been in past tense, and then they're talking about 85, and I thought this was written in 74. It was written in 74. Even in 1985, when nuclear power and solar and geothermal energy are expected to play a more prominent role, hydrocarbon combustion should still constitute about 85% of the energy sector. Thereafter, a steadily increasing proportion of portable fuel may be synthesized using other primary energy sources, but these fuels, too, will require combustion as an essential energy conversion process. This article aims to explain the preeminently important role combustion research should play in our attempts to reduce energy consumption and limit pollution in the face of the rising energy demands of a healthy industrial economy and population growth. In this respect, as appropriate for AA, we particularly emphasize the transportation industry, most examples being concerned specifically with gas turbine combustion chambers for aircraft engines. The conflict between high energy consumption and pollution poses a crucial dilemma. According to Department of Commerce figures, U.S. air pollution in 1966 amounted to 142 million tons, of which about 61%, or 86 million tons, came from industry and power plants in a hydrocarbon-oriented energy economy. Thus, unless appropriate steps are taken, we may expect adverse environmental effects to become more acute because, as brought out in F2, for many years to come, our energy demands will of necessity be met to a large extent by fossil fuels and the combustion process. I'm not going to read the entire thing because it's a lengthy article. But okay, that gives us a starting point for what we're looking at here. We're looking at oil and petroleum and hydrocarbons and what other kinds of energy production are possible. So topically, I think that orients us. And this is a research file, so this is going to be like clippings and articles on the topic that that Corson was looking at. So I don't know exactly how many of them we're going to dive into, but we'll glance through it and see. Jobs for char. The Technology Transfer Subcommittee of the Baltimore Section's Community Action Committee has undertaken a study of alternative uses of carbon char residue for the city of Baltimore. Recently, both the Baltimore and National Capital Section Committee, section community action committees visited the Pyrolysis Resource Recovery Center that turns out the char. The plant takes in 1,000 tons of solid waste each day, heats it in an oxygen-deficient atmosphere, which decomposes combustible materials into burnable gases and inert residues. As end products, the plant produces steam, ferrous metals for recycling, glassy aggregate for street paving, and carbon char for land reclamation and what other uses the subcommittee under Marvin Haar of Aerophysics Isotopes can suggest. Interesting. Energy classification. Oh, that's the name of the magazine. Energy classification. Page 14, hard choices in air. Let's see. Solar energy. Oh, this could be interesting. Solar energy, November 1976. This is actually from the Virginia Engineer. Pages 6 and 7. (1976). First commercial solar heat installation in Virginia begins. The first two commercial solar heated installations in Virginia, authorized by the U.S. Energy Research and Development, went into operation last month at the office of Terry E. Mosley, Incorporated, a Lynchburg contracting firm. The installation was selected to be a living demonstration of the practicality and economy of solar energy. The installation was made by the firm according to a design by Terrell D. Mosley, a professional engineer and president of the firm. It is the third solar installation completed by the firm, which was one of the first contracting companies in the nation to enter the solar energy field. The Lynchburg installation is one of two funded in Virginia by IRDA. The other in Northern Virginia is in progress now. Across the nation, IRDA's funded 34 installations. I guess I didn't really realize that solar energy was even that well adopted in the mid-70s. Got some pictures. Those look like solar panels that you would install today, which kind of makes me feel like we have definitely not invested enough into solar energy research, or they would look significantly different by now. Wow. They look just like solar panels that people would install today. I don't know if anybody knows about solar. This one's kind of interesting. Energy from the ocean's temperature gradient. Again, November of 1976. Ocean temperature differential could power turbine generators. Why aren't we doing this? And if we are, please someone tell me where. Look at this. Okay. Crew living quarters, warm water inlet, evaporator, condenser, cold water pipe, single mooring line, power to shore, anchor, 45-degree Fahrenheit at 1,500 meters depth, 80-degree Fahrenheit at surface. Water near the surface of the ocean is much warmer than water only a few hundred feet below the surface. Utilizing that temperature differential, researchers propose to generate power through the use of the ocean as both a solar collector and a heat storage unit. Preliminary data indicates the solar sea power plants can be constructed at a cost of about $200 per kilowatt, as compared with $700 per kilowatt for a nuclear plant and more than $550 for a coal-fired plant, with no worry about future increases in the price of nuclear fuel or coal. Above and at right are artists' conceptions of two designs now being evaluated for the Energy Research and Development Administration. Because fossil fuel companies and capitalism. This seems like, why? This seems like a no-brainer. Like, it really, really seems like, why wouldn't we do this other than capitalism? And I could also see, like, tide generators, because the tide rises and falls on a regular basis, and if you had turbines in place to be spun by the rising and lowering tide, that would also be a good way to generate energy. Now I'm having thoughts. Selected spots in the world's oceans may become energy pools of the future because of wide temperature variations between warm surface water and frigid water thousands of feet below. The temperature differential, as much as 35 degrees Fahrenheit, can be utilized to power turbine generators, an energy concept known as ocean thermal energy conversion, OTEC. But the potential of OTEC as an economically competitive energy source rests with the researchers who are now trying to solve the engineering and mechanical problems hindering development. As a concept, OTEC is not new. It's been around for more than a century, but the engineering and mechanical problems associated with it have prevented its utilization. Soaring energy prices and decreasing supplies of fossil fuels, however, have rekindled interest to the point that more than $6 million in OTEC research program funds have been allocated by the Solar Energy Division of the Energy Research and Development Administration. November of 1976 in the United States, big fossil fuel energy crisis. This would have been the time period when people were lining up for hours to try and get gas for their car. I think that was 76, wasn't it? Oh, no, it's 2 years after that ended. So recent memory, at least. The 1970s energy crisis was in the US was caused by an embargo against oil imports. And it went from October 73 to January 74. Interesting. But the crisis itself lasted until 1980, it looks like. Petroleum production in the US and some other parts of the world peaked in the 60s and early 70s. World oil production per capita began a long-term decline after 1979. So yeah, I think 76, people definitely would have been interested. They would have been concerned with alternate fuel sources and cool, interesting. I mean, not cool, but it's interesting. Interesting is the proper word, not cool. Not cool. Okay, so where was it? ERDA recently selected Battelle's Pacific Northwest Laboratories to coordinate programs in biofouling and, oh, yay, it works. 16-bit Eric is raiding with a party of 34. Hello, Whimsies, welcome to an adventure while I break things sitting in front of me. Hello, hi, Pretty Witchery. If you're new here, this is Archival Adventures. This is the show where once a week we dive into the archives. I am the Community Collections Archivist here at Virginia Tech, and so once a week we basically do an unboxing. It's material I've never seen before, most often, and we dive in and see what we can find. This week we are looking at energy production. It's supposed to be part of our high energy physics series, although so far we haven't found high energy physics, but we found some really interesting alternative energy production options. And so you just arrived while I'm looking at this article about ocean temperature differential generators. And this article is from November of 1976. But yeah, if anybody is here who doesn't follow 16-bit Eric, also Eric, thank you so much for popping in. And I completely understand if you need to go and rest. Go and rest. If you're not following 16-bit Eric, you should follow 16-bit Eric. Eric is a wonderful streamer who is very, very knowledgeable about the entertainment industry and TTRPGs, and just a great community to hang out with and have fun. Just, yeah, great conversations, good people, and Eric is a star. So yeah, you should drop a follow over there if you don't already follow. The Forbidden Lands attempts to defeat Big Oil. Exactly. It's also just waving at gamma particles like, hi, energy physics. No, he should rest. Mandatory self-care sword. Hi, Lord Portico. So this just seems like a really interesting idea for power generation to me, where they're using the difference in water temperature between the surface and 1,500 meters in depth to cause turbines to turn and generate power. Let's see. We were just looking here. ERDA recently selected Battelle's, so this is 1976, Pacific Northwest Laboratories to coordinate programs in biofouling and corrosion, two conditions which would greatly reduce the energy output of OTEC generating plants. Battelle's Lyle Perigo is heading the effort to research, design, control, and alleviation of the anticipated biofouling and corrosion problems. OTEC power generation requires huge underwater plants as long and as wide as a football field, Perigo said. Warm ocean waters boil pure ammonia, producing vapor to power the generator. Cooling for condensation of the ammonia is provided by colder waters pumped from depths of 1,500 to 4,000 feet. OTEC power plants can be built, he said, at any ocean spot where surface temperatures are 15 to 20 degrees Celsius warmer than the water below. Areas where generating plants could be constructed and operated under U.S. control include waters off Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Hawaii, and Guam. Since the system's thermodynamic efficiency is low, huge heat exchangers are needed to produce power. Each of the 4 to 6 units per plant is about 100 feet long and as high as a 7-story office building. There are also 100,000 tubes to carry the water through the system. That's a lot of tubes. The heat exchange units are the most critical points for corrosion and biofouling, the growth of slime and other sea life on the sensitive equipment. Perigo said that a film of only 1/100th of an inch thick on the heat exchangers could reduce heat transfer by 50%. One main option is a continuous mechanical cleaning method, which will control or inhibit corrosion or biofouling, so the system operates at maximum efficiency, he said. Another possible, although less likely method is the use of toxic materials to inhibit marine organisms. This, of course, raises environmental concern to deal with. Yeah. Must develop a method which doesn't drain large amounts of energy from the OTEC system. Current designs call for 35% of the system's power to be used for pumping, cleaning, and other operations. Any further drain of energy for a cleaning process would make OTEC economically impractical. So maybe that's why we don't have these. They were deemed economically impractical. But that, or capitalism and the fossil fuels industry. Studies now in progress include heat transfer devices to measure and characterize biofouling, investigation of design factors and how they can reduce biofouling, and a state-of-the-art study of the chemical and mechanical cleaning methods for low-temperature marine heat exchange and conceptual method for using one cleaning process. We're dealing with an energy source which could supply 4 to 6% of our power by 2020. And yet it does not. Its fate now depends on our ability to use modern technology to control the natural processes of the ocean. It's no small task, but it's one of the options we have to consider now as an alternative energy source. And Shadows of Life, I had the same thought. Tidal power also seems like it would be a viable option, and that would be moon power. Yeah, like solar power and lunar power. That's a big plant. Does it need Seymour to feed it? Anything you have to keep in the sea is a problem, especially away from the shore. But that wouldn't have stopped them if they thought it would bring money. Yeah, I mean, they're building windmills out in the ocean. So having temperature gradient turbines floating in the ocean doesn't seem like it would have been too outlandish. And then we've got electric power systems for space. I'm not going to read this entire thing because it's really long, but a progress report. So this is a NASA solar array, 1976. All right, I'm gonna flip through a little bit here because I'm getting bogged down. Uranium fuels seen for next 25 years. Oh yeah, 1975. Yeah, we went beyond that. NASA, hydrogen enriched fuel. That could be interesting to look at, but solar energy, geothermal energy. So this is interesting. I want to look at some of the other options though, or some of the other folders. Yes. The person whose papers these are, Blake Corson Jr., was a physicist and engineer, and he primarily worked on wind tunnels at NASA Langley, but he did work on a project to investigate energy independence, which is how this collection came up for one of my streams that's supposed to be focused on high energy physics. So we haven't seen a ton of high energy physics yet, but it's still really interesting. Okay, This is literally just a copy of U.S. News and World Report from February of 1977. I wonder why. Oh, the energy crisis is just beginning. We were just talking about this. Interview with James Schlesinger. Wow, that's hard to say. Schlesinger, White House Energy Advisor. It is a Valentine's Day edition. Warnings from an expert. The fuel shortages are real and there are no miraculous remedies. Voluntary conservation is a must, but stronger measures will be needed too as oil and gas resources approach exhaustion. And yet we're still using them today. 1977. Oil and gas resources approach exhaustion. And here we are in 2023, and they're still our primary energy sources. It's a lot of crushed dinos and stubbornness. Right. So there's some Q&As. Emergency legislation to ease the natural gas shortage. What more is needed? Need to continue voluntary conservation. The dropping of temperatures to 65 degrees in the home, if uniformly applied, would provide us with something more than half of what we require to deal with the colder weather this year. Okay, I can tell you, that is probably not comfortable long term. Mainly I can tell you that because my office is consistently around 65 degrees, although my office also tends to have a humidity of like that. But this room, it's up to 75, but look at that humidity, 15% relative humidity. It's very dry in here. Which reminds me, I'm gonna take a drink. Oh, the whole building is like that today. Super, super dry. Let's see. Must we look forward now to these natural gas shortages every year? We've had shortages before, not so extreme as this year. In recent years, the supply of natural gas has been dropping 4% a year. I mean, this all seems like conversations that could be happening today. Is there any other alternative to coal? Even if it means putting up with some damage to the environment? We do not intend to see the energy problem turn into a simple way of rolling back environmental protection. There are now available techniques for cleaning up coal. Really? I mean, arguably, coal is still highly polluting, but it is significantly cleaner today than it was in 1977 or before that. But to say it's completely safe and stop looking for an alternative, it would be incorrect. That's about how humid your town is most of the year. 15% relative humidity is not good for you. Like, that is dry. That is can lead to more respiratory issues, sinus problems, and whatnot, because your mucous membranes can get dried out, and yeah, just generally not super great. All right, I've got one here that I marked. Folder 11. Let's see. Proposal outlining the feasibility of humans in space. Between 15 to 30 is technical norm, often very low when you check. Honestly, I'm happy today to be in a room that's 75 degrees. Normally 75, I'd be like, wow, it's so warm in here. But that's 24 Celsius. But I have spent like 3 days nonstop, not getting above 66 degrees. And so it's nice to feel warm for once. Purposes. General. Acquisition of knowledge about the Earth, solar system, and interstellar space. 2, military and propaganda. At least acquisition of knowledge is first. B, ballistic missiles, atmospheric and meteorological research, and then military weapon. Again, I'm thankful to see the science purpose listed first. C, glide vehicles, aerodynamic heating research, exploratory research, manned spaceflight. 3, long-range military weapon. This is deeply 1970s. This is the proposal outlining the feasibility of humans in space. Notes/data. This is one of them is not dated and one of them is from 1946. So I don't know the date on this specifically. I think the printed document behind it is going to be the 1946 or somewhere in here. I don't know. The folder just says no date and 1946. Which implies that there's more than one document and at least one of them is undated and one of them is from 1946. D, satellites and unmanned space vehicles. 1, investigation of upper atmosphere and near space. 2, solar and interstellar radiation. 3, investigation of meteor encounters. 4, Earth mapping. 5, study of terrestrial, lunar, and solar gravitation. Yeah, very Cold War. 6, study of terrestrial, lunar, and solar magnetism. 7, military surveillance. Spy satellites, number 7. But again, so he's included, or whoever, if this was a committee, I'm not sure, but they've included military in every category, but it's always the last thing they put on there. But I think it was like, okay, we have to sell this to the people, and the people that are gonna be giving us the money are interested in military. So make sure that you include military everywhere. E, manned space vehicles. Can I get a historical terms, please? Because while this was common English at the time that this was written, more inclusive and more commonly today, the term would be crewed space vehicles, rather than using the gendered term manned. Acquisition of astronomical knowledge about Earth, Moon, and solar system. Investigation of feasibility of space travel by human beings. Permits study of suitability of other planets, Venus, Mars, for human habitation. Permits detailed study of Earth at a distance from the surface. 5, solution to overpopulation of Earth? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah, I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with the phrasing that is on here. It's just that it is unnecessary and unnecessarily gendering. And if you go far enough back, so a lot of people argue about the use of the default masculine in English. But if you go back into like Old English, there were neutral terms that were used. It wasn't until later. It wasn't until like the 18th century, I think, that the default masculine started to be used in English. So people who get mad about like the use of they as a singular, they always has been singular. Ye was the plural, and we don't really use it anymore. But they has always been singular, or was always singular. They and ye. And then we dropped one of them and made the other one plural. But if you go back far enough, it was always used when you didn't know somebody's gender, or yeah. Anyway, Old English was a lot closer to German. Yes, Old English is very Germanic, yes. As a Quaker friend is fond of pointing out, thee has forgotten that singular they is older than singular you. Indeed, key squared. Absolutely correct. Let's see, 2, dynamics. Body forces, gravitation, magnetism, electric, aerodynamics. Hey, actually, we got an entire category here that didn't have military. Manned space vehicles. No military item listed. Let's see. B, propulsion, air, fuel, turbojets, ramjets. 2, chemical fuels, liquid propellants, solid propellants. 3, ion propulsion. That sounds really interesting. 4, photon propulsion. 5, fission reactor energy. I would like to know more, please. 6, thermonuclear fusion energy. 7, light pressure as propulsion. 8, interstellar magnetism. There's a reason I pulled this folder. I was glancing through looking for how things connected to high energy physics, and I was like, hey, fission. We got some fission going on. Photon propulsion and ions, and hello, high energy physics. It's good to see you. Amazing. Attach some turrets to it. Sounds like a Star Trek Technobabble writing handbook. Except that this is all a NASA engineer. Like, they really were working on these things. Control for guidance, items under 2B through B1 through 8. So that would be air as a fuel, turbojets, ramjets, chemical fuels, all of the things that we just looked at. Also reverse propulsion, aerodynamic, and rotating wheel inertia. I don't know what rotating wheel inertia is, but Gene did not pull it out of thin air. And honestly, the idea of warping space isn't super outlandish. It's just like, theoretically we know how to do it. Practically we don't. But that doesn't mean that we won't figure it out. Theoretically, we know how to do it, but we also know theoretically that it's not possible. But it's science. which means that everything definite in science is definite until we learn more and discover that it's not definite. So just because we don't think it's possible now doesn't mean it's actually not possible. It just means that to the best of our knowledge, it's not possible. But we could discover something tomorrow that upends our entire theory and discover that it is actually possible. 40 years from now, according to First Contact. Gene was in the Air Force. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I'm absolutely certain that he was familiar with some of the theories that were being discussed. Operational techniques for launching, landing, and navigation, purposes, dynamics. So these are notes. Feasibility of human travel in space. Response to accelerations, takeoff, re-entry, control, weightlessness, artificial gravity, rotation, spiral path requires power. Calculate variation of acceleration weight when in elliptical orbit around Earth. Cool. I'm reading somebody else's notes, which they don't mean as much to me as they would have to the person that wrote them, I guarantee you. Physiological survival, air, oxygen, as well as purification, water, as well as purification, food, temperature, noise levels, intense. There's a range, intense to silence, and waste disposal. So this is, they're working on a proposal for sending humans into space. Makes sense that these would be topics they're talking about. Psychological considerations, loneliness, companionship. These are all the things that sci-fi movies and sci-fi stories are about. Overcoming these issues or how people deal with them. Physical and mental exercise. Adaptation of senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. What is done on long trips by submarines when submerged? By submariners when submerged, I think is what is meant there. Which is a great question to ask. Like, the people on submarines, what do they do on a long voyage? How do they deal with the mental stress of the isolation? And because those are going to be the same problems faced by people going into space. The notes of someone that knows what they mean, and we're only, yes, which, I mean, that's what notes are, but that doesn't mean, like, that gives us some insight into what the people at NASA were thinking about as they were developing the space program. Cost of achieving space flight, national bankruptcy, penalty if we don't achieve space flight, necessity of achieving space flight, or advantage of being first. I don't know how to notes. Pretty witchery. I never really learned that talent. When I try to take notes, I have a tendency to, no matter how hard I try, I have a tendency to try and start writing down everything that is said. And when I was in high school, I wanted to learn stenography, because if I had just learned stenography and gotten a stenograph, then I could have taken notes the way that I take notes. But I never learned stenography. That said, or shorthand. If I could have, like, I never took the time, but if I had taught myself shorthand so that I could write down in shorthand and keep up, but I never took the classroom to, I never took the time to learn that. I glanced down and saw your comment of classroom reporter, and the word classroom came out of my mouth. That was funny. Maneuver in aneroid space. I'm not familiar with that term. What does that mean? I'll look it up if nobody wants to drop the definition in, but if somebody knows and wants to explain aneroid space, free space, no, oh, aneroid space is free space, not near a gravitational field. Apparently, at least that's what I'm getting from these notes. 1, change of direction requires expenditure of energy. Yes, delta V. I know you so well. A, change heading, no change in speed. B, change heading with change in speed. B, in gravitational field of celestial body, 1, turn in space can be made by passing close to celestial body. A, safe speed, V greater than escape velocity, velocity greater than escape velocity from body, hyperbolic turn. B, elliptical term, rapid turn velocity too low results in collision with body. Addition of energy required to avoid capture. Looks like aneroid space would be space where there's a difference in pressure inside and outside the vehicle. Interesting. But I don't think that's what they were meaning in this document. Relating to or denoting a barometer that measures air pressure by the action of the air in deforming the elastic lid of an evacuated box or chamber? Are there other definitions? I'm checking Webster's dictionary now. Operating by the effect of outside air pressure on a diaphragm forming one wall of an evacuated container, using no liquid. Okay. So no liquid. And so if you extrapolate that to space, containing no liquid or actuated without the use of liquid. So extrapolate that to space. Huh. I'm not sure I quite understand exactly what is meant. Other than, I think he means free space where they're not near a gravitational field. But it seems like a weird word to pick for that. How to move in space where there isn't a fluid, liquid, or gas around the space. Yeah, I think he's using it to refer to space where you're not in a gravitational field. Or, I don't know. It's weird. Or maybe it's in space where you don't have an atmosphere around you, because he's maneuvering in aneroid space into multiple categories, one of which is you don't have a gravitational field, one of which you have the gravitational field. So maybe it just means outer space, like what we think of as outer space, where you're beyond the atmosphere. I don't know. It's like A and B in his outline are given, yes, different cases of aneroid space. These are the kinds of things that you run across looking at old documents. It's like, okay, what was he actually saying? Because he's using this word in a way that I can't find any other use of that word in that way. Note, an atmospheric aircraft, by virtue of being able to exert force on the surrounding air to obtain lift with relatively small cost in drag can largely conserve the aircraft's kinetic energy in a turn. A spacecraft cannot turn in free space without expenditure of energy. That note helps to clarify. So yeah, what he's talking about, aneroid space, is what we think of as like outer space. It is space out beyond the atmosphere. Because he's contrasting it to an atmospheric aircraft that has the surrounding atmosphere that it can use to push and conserve energy when making directional changes. And out in aneroid space, that's not possible because there is no atmosphere to push against. Interesting. Relation between M, air temperature, density, dynamic pressure, altitude, heating rate, and radiation. And I don't know why it doesn't want to focus. Come on. Yeah, I don't know what's there. Mass, air temperature, density, dynamic pressure, altitude, heating rate, and radiation. I think M is mass in this case. I don't know though. Research fields, scope and temperature, space vehicle, Earth satellites, ballistic missiles, glide vehicles, vehicle per se, power plants, or vehicles per se, power plants, expansion of knowledge. It's interesting. All of these notes before were printed, and then we hit this page and it's in script. Everything before this page was printed, and this is script. Daggone Greek root words. You were trying to parse where you'd heard something like aneroid before and just realized ringing a very small distant bell because of anaerobic. Yes. Bacteria that exist without oxygen, so without air. Hey. Yeah, no, it is related to anaerobic. And I saw that in the etymology note that it was related to anaerobic, but I didn't dig into it. So excellent researching there. Thank you, Puddleglum. Expansion of knowledge, solution to overpopulation of Earth, military weapons, military logistics, commercial transport. Accuracy, aerodynamic performance, aerodynamic heating, control, anti-gravity. Sun to Earth, 93 times 10 to the 6th power miles. Sun to Mars, 140 times 10 to the 6th power miles. Earth to Mars, minimum 47 times 10 to the 6th power miles. At 25,000 miles per hour. Earth to Mars at minimum is 1.9 times 10 to the 1.9 times 10 to the 3rd power hours of transit. 1.9 times 10 to the 3rd power. Hang on one second, because I'm just going to use the lovely site Wolfram Alpha to actually calculate that, because my brain won't do math and it's in my head. Thank you, Puddleglum. You got there well before me. 1,900 hours, which is 79.17 days. 79 days and 4 hours. So under 3 months. less than 3 months to go from the Earth to Mars when they are at their closest point. And oh my gosh, it's right there on the page. 1900 over 24, approximately 80 days. We did the calculations instead of reading what was in the notes. Anyway, we checked his math and it's right. He's rounding up, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, around the world in 80 days, so Earth to Mars in 80 days, why not? Earth velocity around Sun, 8 times 10 to the 9th. Velocity in miles per hour equals 2 pi times 93 times 10 to the 6th power over 365.25 times 24 equals 6.28 times 0.93 times 10 to the 8th power over 3.65 times 25 times 2.4 times 10 to the 3rd power. Velocity is 66,500 miles per hour. I'm not checking the math this time, but I can read it. This is math I can actually read. Oh, this is interesting. Aircraft through high L over O can conserve energy in turn. Spacecraft cannot. I don't know what L over O means here, but magnetic drag, body and eccentric ellipse around the sun. Never lose sight of fact that so far as we know, never lose sight of the fact that so far as we now know, Mother Earth to human beings is more important than space. As the Tower of Babel undermined Nimrod, so the attempt to conquer space might bankrupt the United States. Okay, I understand that that is some sort of reference to a story in the Christian Bible. The Tower of Babel is a story from the Bible, right? I'm not super knowledgeable about religion. Talked about LO earlier in different terms. Don't remember exactly what he said. Lift and using the air around it. Got it. Okay. And yes, okay, good. I was like, I recognize Tower of Babel. I know the story. That's one of the stories I know. I know Nimrod is a name from that story, but I don't remember who Nimrod is in that story. Nimrod was a mighty man. So whoever Nimrod was, the Tower of Babel was bad for Nimrod. And I'm guessing he put everything he had into it, and its failure / collapse ruined him. And so the idea here being the US throwing everything they have at space might bankrupt the US. And honestly, if this was from the 40s, everybody that was reading it, everybody who would know Tower of Babel and Nimrod, and that would be a comparison that would be perfectly useful for them. I was not super good at paying attention in Sunday school, and other than Christmas stories, I don't know most of the Bible stories. Tower of Babel was when people, yeah, I know it's when they try to build a tower so high it would reach heaven. And they were punished by having their language scrambled, which is a story about why everybody speaks all sorts of different languages. Bugs Bunny was actually bad for Nimrod. He ruined the name. I mean, it's similar to like the story of, and honestly, the story that you'll see more often in speculative fiction uses that sort of has the same moral is Icarus. Right? Wasn't it Icarus? Yeah, Icarus. Flew too close to the sun. Sorry. I said the name and then I had to double check it. Yeah, the Bugs Bunny cartoons, the name Nimrod was used as an insult. And so most people who grew up watching those, that's how they knew the name. I knew that long before I knew that it was a name. Technical problems, propulsion, maneuver, navigation, takeoff and return, heating, navigation, still a ship. I like that note. Objectives, purpose, evaluation of importance, unmanned, different purposes and problems versus manned. Objectives, technical research areas, propulsion, launching, guidance, control, landing. Example, missile accuracy, control. Missile accuracy. Yeah, we want our missiles to be accurate. Both so that we don't accidentally hit our troops and so that we do hit the things we're trying to hit. A good solution to the propulsion problem would automatically solve heating problem on takeoff and landing, maneuvering, much of the control problem, operating problems, speed, navigation. I don't know. I find all the NASA stuff interesting. Yeah, I think it's all written by the same person. I just think he's switching between cursive and print. And honestly, I remember being required to do cursive in school, and I was not very good at cursive, and I wasn't comfortable doing it, and it made me slower. I write so much quicker in print than I do in cursive, but I would get in trouble for doing print. I'm gonna see if I can get it to focus better if I stick something in here so that it doesn't see the line. Will that help it? Because I think maybe the divider between the two tables was causing it to do weird focusy things. I think this is better. You had to earn a pen license? My cursive would be really easy because it would take me as long as somebody doing calligraphy as art to write something. Purposes of space vehicles, unmanned and manned. Purposes of space flight, satisfaction of scientific curiosity, many subheadings. Solution to overpopulation of Earth, military, question mark, surveillance of Earth, propaganda value. So this looks like a precursor to the list that we saw first in this folder. One of your psychiatrists was, when you were a kid, how to make a note for your teachers so you'd be allowed to write in print in class. Purposes of atmospheric aircraft. Operating techniques, fly off as opposed to blast off. Landing, no lift, high drag, high deceleration, moderate heating, high lift, low deceleration, long glide, high heating. Reverse thrust, deceleration to Mach 2.5, fly in, nose rocket. Nose rocket? I guess it makes sense. I don't think they ever actually did put a rocket in the nose as reverse thrust. But I can see how that would be the concept. Big fuss about it. You're left-handed, so you failed to get it, but the next year they never asked about it. The license is a lie. Cursive is way faster. But if you want to be able to read it easily, then let me take a little longer to write and print. Honestly, at this point, if you want to be able to read it, let me type. Because it's been so long since I wrote consistently that I put the letters in the wrong order when I'm handwriting. Which is not a dyslexia issue. It's I get ahead of myself and I start writing the numbers. I start writing things incorrectly because my brain has already moved on to the next word, even though, okay, I'm gonna try and get it to focus. What is up? I'm gonna switch it over to manual focus here. And we will attempt to adjust, because this is strange. Ahoy hoy. Cursed document confirmed. I mean, it's not even, I don't understand. It's just graph paper. It's literally just graph paper. Okay, it's in focus now. I'm gonna try and zoom in and see if it will stay in focus. So weird. That's the zoom level we were at. And yeah, you can see it's having difficulty focusing because graph paper. And I took it out and put it in manual focus and it lost the focus. That's okay. I can't always focus either. One of my teachers in high school told us that most of us could submit either handwritten or typed papers, but few of us would be required to submit typed papers. To be fair, she did not publicly name the students who had terrible handwriting. Yeah, it can't decide what it's supposed to focus on. If the camera was not way up high, I could do manual focus and it would be fine. It's just graphs. There's just a couple of graphs. Which, you know, considering it's graph paper, having graphs on it makes sense. I had 1 year where I was in an AP English class and I was required to type some work over the summer, like, because AP classes in high school, we actually had to do work over the summer. We had, like, before our first day of class, we had homework to do that we had to bring with us and have done. So basically I had a paper to write over the summer. And that summer I was at my grandparents' place, and like the assumption was, oh, you know, everybody's going to be able to do this. Everybody's got a computer now with a word processor because it was the 90s. I was staying at my mom's parents' house. They had no such thing. I used a manual typewriter and the only paper they had was blue. So I wrote that paper in blue ink because they only had a blue ink ribbon for the typewriter. Blue ink, manual typewriter on blue paper. And I turned it in. The requirement was that it be typed. And it was typed. That said, my English teacher was fine with that. Not everyone has a computer even now. I know. That would have been like 95, 96. Gosh. Correspondence with President Jimmy Carter about the energy crisis. We still have a typewriter at home. It is not the kind of typewriter that I know my husband would like. We have one that is a style that everybody would already be familiar with, but I know he would love one that has a ball instead of the keys, which there's a whole movie about. If you happen to be in a locale where you can watch the movie Populaire, it's a French movie about typewriters. It's a good movie. Used to be available in the US on Netflix, but then it wasn't anymore, and there's no way to get it in the US. I realize that's a address side of the card. Okay, let's see here. What do we got? Return receipt. Oh, it's a registered mail certificate. Article addressed to President Jimmy Carter at the White House. Certified mail delivered February 25th, 1977. Typewriter keyboard for reasons. I mean, the mechanical clickety-clackety of it is very satisfying. Yes, there will be lots of lost media. There are many issues. People were sold DVDs and CDs as long-term access to things. And there were advertising campaigns that implied that if you save your files on like a DVD or a CD, these are going to last for like 100 years. But the actual like data life on a CD is 10 years maximum of like completely reliable data recovery. And now that doesn't mean that you can't get something from it after 10 years. It just means that after 10 years, the likelihood that you won't be able to recover what's on it is much, much greater. And so, yeah, lots of people would stick stuff on CDs, assuming that they would always be able to get it. And it's like, yeah, no, those degrade over time. And your CD is probably not usable anymore after 15, 20 years. Ants once ate your audiobook CD? Oh gosh. Studios are just deleting things for tax reasons. Yep, sure. That's a thing that happens. Receipt for certified mail. Okay, so correspondence with Jimmy Carter. Let's see what we got. Presidential aid. Yeah, we're gonna do this again. I'm gonna stick the white cardboard behind so that I get rid of the separator between the table. There we go. May 2nd, 1977. Presidential aid, the White House. This letter not used as of May 3rd, 77. Okay. Dear Sir, in response to President Carter's public request last winter for suggestions related to energy, I forwarded to the President a monograph entitled Toward Energy Independence, attached to a letter dated February 23rd, 1977. Thank you, Hannah, for the time alert. Also, I'm so happy that you get customers when I'm streaming. I had hardly expected the president to have time to send a 10-page communication. But I had hoped that one of his assistants might have seen it. time to read a 10-page communication. But I had hoped that one of his assistants might have seen it. It is easily possible that either my letter or the president's reply may have become lost. I will be grateful for my information, for any information you can give me. I extend my sincere good wishes to President Carter and to his family. I commend him especially for his courageous witness. Respectfully, Blake W. Corson Jr. President Carter's wife just was buried earlier this week, so getting some materials related to Carter wasn't intentional, but they are time appropriate, apparently. February 23rd, 1977. Here's a copy of what he sent to the president. As per my last, which nobody read. Oh, pretty witchery. We have had a number of those as per my lasts come up on this show. I think if you go back to like the first year of episodes to the VODs on the YouTube, the library's YouTube, one of the episodes about ornithology, there's a whole like correspondence issue with where we were looking at letters with a bird business in the area here, and there were definitely some as per my last letters that came in there. The President, the White House. Dear President Carter, this letter with the attached monograph entitled Toward Energy Independence are in response to your request for suggestions from members of the general public. The thoughts set forth in the monograph, when combined with related ideas from other contributors, may be of help to you and to your assistants in formulating a broad policy on energy for this country. With best wishes, I am, very respectfully yours, Blake W. Corson Jr. Wow, we've got a couple of copies of that. Let's see what we have here. This is a pyrolytic catalytic converter unit illustration from February 19th of 1977. Why? Oh. Let's take a look at the I love somebody was like, no staples. Okay, great. Toward Energy Independence by Blake W. Corson Jr., NASA, retired, February 22nd, 1977. This monograph presents the results of a limited review of the works of other authors directed toward expanding the energy resources of the United States. So that's what we were looking at the very top of the stream, some of those articles about alternative energy sources like the ocean temperature gradient generator. The reason he was looking at those was to prepare this that he sent to the president. The study received initial impetus from a lecture by Dr. T.B. Reed of MIT, delivered at the Langley Research Center of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and by articles on the fuel value of methanol, references 1 and 2. The processes discussed in this paper, for the most part, come under the disciplines of agriculture and chemical engineering. With a background in aeronautical engineering, the author makes no claim of originality for the ideas set forth here, but has tried to avoid plagiarism. The course of action advanced in this study is directed toward partial solution to 3 of the problems now facing the people of this country: the energy shortage, environmental protection, and unemployment. The real thing you note is how much pencil has fallen out of favor. Yeah, there is a lot of pencil. And honestly, I use pencil all the time, but that's because I work in an archives. This is a comfortable mechanical pencil that I quite like to use. This one's a good one. The other pencil I have with me, for you Critical Role fans out there, you may recognize this pencil. Proposed action. It is proposed to construct at appropriate locations throughout the country Purox furnaces combined with catalytic converters to transform urban waste into methanol, which is an excellent automotive fuel. So this proposal was to burn trash to generate methanol to be used as car fuel. Conversion of all of this country's urban and domestic waste into methanol would supply only about 10% of our automotive fuel needs. The remaining 90% required to enable this nation to achieve energy independence with regard to automotive fuel might be derived from low-grade agricultural material. This material can be supplied by energy crops, weeds, straw, brush, or any plant material allowed to grow specifically for conversion to liquid fuel. So this is essentially what Iowa does with ethanol and some of the Midwest states, where they actually will just grow material that is then later used. I know like roadside clippings and things like that would be allowed to grow, like the grasses on the side of the highway are allowed to grow high, and then they're cut down and harvested for conversion, or were at some point. I'm sure they just grow stuff now specifically for the ethanol industry. But I remember I had a plastic coffee cup that was made from roadside clippings. So he wants biofuel but missed corn. I have not seen this year's Red Nose Day show, Shadows of Life. Was it good? I assume it was. I mean, it's Critical Role. The acreage required to produce plant material having energy equivalents to 220 million gallons of gasoline per day would amount to 10% of this country's land area. That's a lot of land. This scheme should be acceptable to the environmental protectionists. The Purox process does not pollute either the atmosphere or regional water. The volume of solid residue from this pyrolytic process is only about 3% of the original volume of the raw urban waste or furnace feedstock. And even this small residue can be used in road construction or as a filler in fertilizer. Therefore, the need for landfill sites for urban waste disposal is virtually eliminated. And yet we are not doing this. Either that or he was not correct. Atmospheric pollution is reduced because methanol, used as an automotive fuel, produces an engine exhaust relatively free of the noxious compounds produced by petroleum-based fuels. Is methanol more volatile than petroleum? Why aren't we doing this? Like, I know we mix in ethanol. I don't know the big difference between ethanol and methanol. Conversion to a methanol economy to achieve energy independence will relieve the current high level of unemployment. The manufacture of sufficient methanol to meet the automotive fuel needs of this country will require 4,000 or 5,000 pyrolytic catalytic converter units, each unit being sized to process 1,000 tons per day of urban waste or agricultural material. The fabrication and erection of these pyrolytic catalytic converter units in a continuing process will require the labor of many thousands of persons merely to produce hardware. Associated industry and operation of the plants will provide widespread steady employment for many others. More poisonous, possibly? This doesn't seem right to me, to be honest, but I'm not a scientist. More handling hazards? I don't know. I would be interested in that. Might be something fun to look into sometime. because there have been a number of technologies that we've come across on this show that I'm like, this sounds like a great idea. Why aren't we doing this? And this sounds so close to what we're doing with ethanol that it makes me wonder why we're not doing methanol. Ethanol has 2 carbon atoms, while methanol is only 1 atom. Ethanol is less acidic than water, and methanol is more acidic than water. Ethanol has a burning smell and emits a bright blue flame. Methanol has its characteristic odor, and when burning emits a light white flame. Ethanol is prepared by fermentation, while methanol is processed through synthetic processes. Ethanol is the main ingredient of alcoholic beverages, while methanol is highly poisonous and should not be consumed. Methanol is primarily used in the manufacturing of products such as formaldehyde. Methanol has more risks involved with it than ethanol. Methanol is flammable, toxic, and poisonous if ingested, inhaled, or in contact with the skin. Ethanol is toxic, flammable, and is safe for consumption as a critical ingredient of alcoholic beverages. It can be a dangerous chemical if pure alcohol is ingested. Ethanol is more environmentally friendly and safer than methanol. So that would be why. We ended up doing a similar process, but with ethanol instead of methanol. And while methanol would have been less byproducts, ethanol is safer to work with, it sounds like. Interesting. I love this. Once again, we're encountering stuff from the 1970s that sounds like it could be from today. The people of this country should face the truth. We are consuming more energy in the form of petroleum than our wells are producing. With increasing purchases of petroleum from foreign sources, the United States is becoming more and more subject to commercial blackmail and to external political pressure. Petroleum prices are subject to monopolistic control. Prices will continue to increase. The OPEC nations are investing heavily in American industry, banking, agriculture, real estate, and political representation. The United States is being bought with its own money, and its citizens are selling their country for an automobile ride. A more urgent reason to search for another energy source is that, as implied in references 3 and 4, the Earth's reservoir of petroleum will be severely depleted within about 50 years. Adjusting for the time differential, that would be 10 years-ish? No, 5 years from now. Because this was 1977? So yeah, roughly 4 or 5 years from now is the 50 years that they were projecting. Whether we like it or not, we will be forced to relinquish our dependence upon mineral petroleum simply because the oil wells will run dry. Hi, Conciliants. It's a fracking problem, yeah. I mean, part of the reason why we are not today about to run out of petroleum, as was predicted, is because they started finding ways to different ways to extract it, like fracking. Well, fracking is natural gas, not petroleum, but advancements in technology have meant that the supply has lasted longer than was initially predicted, but it's still a limited supply. I do want, really quickly, I'm just gonna glance at this, because it is, I know it's time. At this point, I think get oil from another planet before admitting defeat. Pretty Witchery, you're probably not far off. I don't know that it'd be another planet, but there's definitely, I would say, interest in potentially mining the asteroid belt for resources and bringing those back to Earth. Let's tell them there's oil on Mars. I mean, there could be. I don't know. I don't think there is, because as we understand the generation of oil, there needed to have been some sort of carbon-based stuff. And I don't believe that that's there on Mars, but this is a study on particle behavior a study on particle behavior, calculations, drawings and notes. Particle physics would be high energy physics, right? I wanted to see if there was anything that jumps out, but if it's going to be just graphs and stuff, then that won't be as interesting, especially given limited time, since it is 4:33, which means I was supposed to stop 3 minutes ago. Volume of reaction tube should be 10 times chamber volume. Compression tube should be 2 times the length of the reaction tube. Continuous piece of tube. Straight and round. Region B is curved instead of elliptical. What are we doing? It's a lovely illustration of whatever the test device is that he was working on. This is dated December 7th, 1937. I'm not sure what he was doing. This is a study on particle behavior from 1937. And we get some mathematical calculations from January 14th, 1938. I'm guessing that these are notes probably from his time as a student, a physics student. I'm not sure though. That's interesting. And if I knew more about the maths involved or had time to parse them, I'm sure it would be more interesting. But I don't have the time to dig into it that I would want. But still, I find these kinds of things really interesting. I find all the sciencey stuff really fun and really interesting. Sadly, I don't have more time for today. But next week, we have more NASA. There's more NASA next week. In the form of the Paul Hill collection, which, if you will recall, I can't remember if it was earlier this year or if it was last year, but hang on, I'm trying to bring up the finding aid for my reference real quick. But we looked at the development of space habitats. And there was a big donut-y type thing. You like the Santa hats? There was a big donut thing. I might be able to show it to you if I find one more second here. So I'm gonna try and not blast out your ears, but hold. Ha, yes, good. Mute, please, mute. There. I'm going to share my screen here in 1 second. Just bringing it up. There we go. So this episode of Archival Adventures from the past episode 114 of Archival Adventures, which was the Paul R. Hill collection that I ambitiously titled Space Stations and Interstellar Travel. Does the cod look funny with this Santa hat? I could imagine. We had these wonderful habitats with the little like donuts. Oh gosh, the cod is really cute that way. Space station requirements, manned orbital research laboratory. I don't know. I was trying to see if I could find the pictures. Anyway, there's a whole episode out there, episode 114, if you want to review what we looked at regarding NASA's work designing space stations. But we never got to the interstellar travel part. I ran out of time. Whoever would have thought that I would have run out of time? So next week, we're going to revisit the Paul Hill collection, and we're going to look at the stuff on interstellar travel that I didn't manage to get to last time, because we were looking at these really, really neat space station designs. So once again, we will be looking at stuff from somebody who worked at NASA Langley. And that will be next week. Oh, look at I'm behind myself there on the screen, and that is really weird. Anyway, so that's what's coming up next week. And then after that, we're going to look at some stuff related to Virginia Tech's radio station, which I did a special on earlier this year, but we're actually going to dig in and look at some stuff. I think that one I'm probably going to focus on the creation of the emergency broadcast system, because we have documentation in the WUVT papers about the creation of the United States emergency broadcast system. So I believe that's what we'll be looking at on the 13th of December. And then on the 20th of December, Hira will join me and we will co-host something food related that is holiday related. I don't know what yet. We haven't decided, but it'll be something holiday food on the last episode of the year, which will be the 20th of December. So that's what's coming up. Oh, the building, that is actually the Torgerson Bridge. That bridge runs between the library and Torgerson Hall, which is the next building over. And on that bridge is like a quiet like reading space. So yeah, that connects to our 4th floor. I'm going to look and see where we want to raid, because I do have to do some teardown. I have to put things away. This is not a room that I control. So let me see where we're gonna go. Let me make sure that this is muted. Let's see, Steven is live playing Dordogne. What's Hyper doing? Don't know what this is. It looks like they're just doing, I don't know what it is. Do you believe in magic? Monterey is on with the shark cam. Oh, kelp forest cam today. You want to go see Steven? I'm happy to go and see Steven. I don't know this game. It looks really pretty though, which it's Stephen Joyce. Of course, it's a pretty game. We'll pop in over and say hello to Stephen Joyce, who is playing Dordogne. I'm not familiar with the game, but Stephen is a wonderful streamer who is over there in Scotland, and I would appreciate it if you would join me and pop on over there and say hi. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining me. Hopefully I will see you again soon. And until I do, keep exploring history, everybody.